A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of 110 Lessons for Life from the teachings of the Commander of the Faithful, Imam Ali. May God's peace and blessings be upon him. In today's very short, very brief tradition, his statement from the Commander of the Faithful, yet something very deep and profound, we wish to look at the topic of knowledge and certainty. What is the difference? What are the similarities between these two? How do they really apply to our lives? How does the Commander of the Faithful wish to explain these two realities to us? You know, when we look at the world that we are in today, we tend to sometimes do things out of sheer ignorance just because we feel like doing something. And many times when we do those actions like that, we tend to, many times regret our actions. But sometimes, or many times, we may do things based on knowledge of a particular action, just knowing some benefits of it. And sometimes we go to the level of having a complete level of certainty, full conviction in something, and we press ahead with that, based on that certainty that we have developed. How does the Commander of the Faithful explain these to us, and how do we implement this within our day-to-day life? Before we continue on with the understanding, let us look at the words of the Commander of the Faithful in today's tradition. He says the following statement: "Do not turn your knowledge into ignorance, and do not turn your conviction into doubt. When you gain knowledge, act upon it, and when you acquire conviction, proceed on its basis." It's clear from the Quranic narrative that there is a difference between what they call ilm and yaqeen. Ilm being knowledge and yaqeen being a level of certainty. There's a clear distinction within Islamic teachings and the Quran about these two and what they mean and how we have to and how we should be interpreting them. Generally speaking, the way the commentator has offered explanation of this tradition, he tells us that knowledge is something that we just gain. For example, you go to the doctor. In my own example here, we get sick and we go to the doctor, and the doctor prescribes a certain medication for us, and he tells us that take this medication for a certain number of days, a certain number of pills every day in a routine, in a schedule, and all things considered, you will get better. This medicine will help you out. So you go get the prescription, you have it filled, you take the medication, and you recover. But you initially based that on the knowledge that the doctor gave to you. You didn't necessarily have experience or certainty that that medication would help, but you took it based on some knowledge given to you by this healthcare professional. That would be knowledge. But certainty can be understood as being derived from the outcome based on some knowledge. So maybe you've taken some medication and it worked in the past and you were cured of the sickness. You have now developed a level of certainty that particular medication has helped you in the past and it will help you again. Obviously, we know that the fact that Allah is the true curer, Allah is the healer, the medicine is a means through which we get cured, but Allah is the one who put the cure in that medication, and Allah is the one who would grant us relief through that medication. The medicine doesn't cure us on its own. It is based on Allah giving it that ability. But when we've taken it and we've seen that it helped, now we develop a level of certitude. This is the first level, is to understand this differentiation or understanding the correlation between knowledge and certainty. We see this even within the Quranic stories and the history of the previous prophets. As an example, Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, and his interaction with the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh had seen the miracles that Prophet Moses was bringing from God. And so we understand that Pharaoh had knowledge of God. He knew God existed when he saw what Moses could do, realizing that he had none of these abilities, although he claimed to be a God himself. He had knowledge of God, but he didn't have that certainty in God. He didn't truly believe in the depths of his heart of who or what God was. And so we see that for him, knowledge was really of no benefit. And had he reached the level of conviction, of certainty, of a true acceptance, that would have been benefit for him. But he stopped only at having that theoretical knowledge of God without acceptance of the messages of God given to him through Prophet Moses. It's a misunderstanding that this word, this statement from the Commander of the Faithful makes complete sense, where he tells us not to turn our knowledge into ignorance or our conviction into doubt. What he basically means, and what the point is that he's trying to get across to us, is that when we have knowledge of, for example, the Day of Judgment, we believe that the Day of Judgment will occur because God has told us about it in the Quran and in previous scriptures. We believe it because the Prophet and his successors have spoken about it at length in many traditions. When we believe in it, then that needs to be translated into our practical actions on a day-to-day basis. If a person believes in something and then doesn't follow that belief up with working to fulfill or attain it, then we could really say that they don't really have belief in it. You know, somebody who believes on the day of judgment that they will be judged by God and held to account for their actions, the good and the bad, the big and the small. If they have that belief, they would act upon it, and they would ensure that they perform those actions that would give them salvation on that Day of Judgment. And so really, to believe in the Day of Judgment but not to perform good actions is as if you're not believing in the Day of Judgment at all. And so the Commander of the Faithful says that don't change your knowledge into ignorance. You have knowledge of something, act upon it to get you that outcome. You have conviction in something, don't change that into doubt by not following what we need to do to get to that desired result, that outcome that we believe and we have conviction in. Sometimes we might ask ourselves that why is it that even though I know something is not allowed in Islam, why do I still perform it? Or that I know that something is an obligation but I still don't do it. One of the reasons and one of the responses we can offer is that that knowledge really hasn't settled deep into us. We haven't really truly understood it or accepted it. For example, the Quran tells us that to consume the wealth of an orphan, to take something which is the right of an orphan, is as we are eating fire, as if we were consuming fire into our stomachs. Now we read this in the Quran, we read this in the traditions, the statements of the Prophet and his family, but until we develop a conviction in that reality, it becomes just an abstract concept of the Quran. That, you know, we read and we pass through that verse because we don't delve on it, we don't reflect on it, we don't think about it. And so it becomes easy for us to take the wealth of the orphan because we don't think about these, or we maybe don't even know about such passages. So one of the things that we have to appreciate is that for us to take that knowledge to the next level of practice, of implementation, is we need to have that firmly grounded knowledge in these aspects of our religion, of the obligations and the prohibitions, and also the outcome of not performing these actions, what lies for us in the world to come. Point number 2, and we'll conclude with this, is that no, we know the good and bad, the right from the wrong, the pleasures from the punishment in the world to come. But we let our desires, our passions, our whims get the best of us. We let Satan tempt us, and we follow in the ways that he pushes us towards. We know the punishment is there, we know the rewards are there, but we disregard them because we are maybe given temporary pleasures in this world, and we feel that, you know, it would be better to have a moment of pleasure now and suffer the consequences years down in the line and on the Day of Judgment, rather than give up the pleasures of this temporal world. And so as we conclude, let us try to work on this aspect of having knowledge and acting upon it, of learning the religion and following through with it, of practice, and of knowing why we do what we do to help cement and formulate that love in our heart for the practice and the teachings of our religion. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.